Rebecca Rogers. Welcome back to my channel. But regardless, I'm so happy that you're here.
Hi guys, I am Carolyn Dunton. You can find me across social media by my handle, Carolyn Dunton, on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, on Snapchat, all the things.
And I'm Dan Povenmire. You can find me behind the KFC on Lancaster.
Dan is very modest. He actually created the Minions.
The Minions is one of my
nothing
favorite.
to do with the Minions.
Yeah. That's his whole thing. He created the Minions.
I had nothing to do with it.
But anyways, it is Tuesday, which means it's apple picking day, and they look very confused. They have no idea what that means. I don't explain anything to anybody. Every Tuesday, people send in stories to my subreddit, r/AmITheBadApple, where they don't know if they acted appropriately or not. They want to know if they're a good apple, a bad apple, a crab apple, and we read the stories, we talk about our ideas, and just kind of form an opinion.
So we just get to judge people.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm good at that.
But without further ado, let's get started with this week's episode of Am I the Bad Apple? Let's go apple picking!
Yeah, let's get some apples!
Apple number 1. Am I the bad apple for pushing atheism onto my child? I, 39 non-binary, am an atheist, and my daughter, 7 years old, is a Christian. My daughter's gone to church with some Christian friends of mine and their kids, and I believe my daughter's spiritual journey is completely her own, and I want to do everything I can to facilitate her spiritual growth, whatever that might mean to her. One day she came home from church and told me that the congregation was doing a mass baptism for all the kids that wanted to do it, but they have to ask their parent permissions first. All of her friends were going to be baptized and she wanted to do it too. Now, I grew up in a fundamentalist Christian household and I have a lot of religious trauma associated with that. But I also understand that this is a big milestone for every young Christian, and I'm worried that my daughter hasn't demonstrated a thorough enough understanding of Christian terminology or theology to make this decision. I told her that I thought it would be better to wait a couple years before being baptized, and I said that I would fully support and even attend her baptism if she just waited until she was a little old enough to fully understand this ritual. I just figured she needed a better reason than, oh, all my friends are doing it. My spouse, however, was upset at me for saying that to our daughter. They said that I was not only depriving her of a childhood social experience, but also pushing my atheism on her. That the theological questions I was asking her beforehand sounded hostile. While I swear I was only asking those questions to probe for her level of understanding, I wonder if my spouse has a point about the first thing. All my friends are doing it is sometimes a very valid answer to engaging in social experiences, and that I need to understand that. So now I'm really second guessing myself and just wondering, am I the bad apple?
Here's my question: is
The
like,
only parent in the room.
why in the world does she care?
If she doesn't
Because she doesn't believe it's real. Is she afraid her daughter's going to get her hair wet? Why that would even enter into it? If she was like, oh, if you want to just go do something, like from her point of view, you want to go do something pretend with your friends? Did she get upset when they played, like pretend games when they were kids? It's like, to me, it's like if she doesn't believe, then she shouldn't worry about it.
Yeah.
If she's afraid because she has a lot of trauma from her fundamentalist religion, that's going to start happening to her daughter. If she believes that if she allows her daughter to go into this, she's going to get that kind of trauma, that's a different thing. But just saying, can she get baptized? Or what does she care? What does she care?
Yeah, absolutely.
What I would say that this parent is doing correctly is having an actual conversation about it, instead of being like, you can't do this or you have to do this, because no one second guesses when a parent pushes their child into Christianity. So why would you have to have that? I think, and this is coming from the perspective of someone who does not have a child, but I think what this parent is doing that is really good is having an open conversation and being honest, and not only questioning the situation itself, but questioning their own beliefs, questioning their own position in what it means to kind of push their own religious ideas onto their children. And I think that that's great, because a lot of people will push their kids into religion, but there is kind of a stigma of people who are not religious pushing that onto their kids in certain circles, I think. I think that this parent is doing the right thing of like, am I overstepping? I want my child to make their own informed decisions about religion, but I also don't want to force my beliefs on them, but I want them to understand what these larger theological conversations mean.
Well, also, if her beliefs are atheism, I don't think anybody could really blame her if she just, I'm going to raise my child atheist.
Yeah.
Because Buddhists raise their child Buddhist. If you start, picking which one's right, then it becomes
right. Everyone has their
crazy.
own
I
thing.
think she's incredibly open-minded and that she's letting her go on her own spiritual journey. I think that's great. But I do sort of question,
why does she care?
Why does it matter?
Why does it matter?
Absolutely.
Why does it matter?
Because even if the daughter ends up getting baptized to go do the stuff with their friends, and then later on either solidifies in the, yes, I'm glad I did this, I definitely want to continue on my Christian journey, or even if they change their mind or like, actually, I don't know if I really feel this spiritual connection to this religion.
Well, here's what I'll say, because the person did mention that they have their own religious trauma, is there's probably also an aspect of being uncomfortable with it because they want to protect their child from the same type of trauma they experienced.
Yes, can definitely understand.
Yeah.
And I what I do love though is that they're realizing that and making sure like, oh, am I projecting this? Like, I do have this trauma. Am I overstepping? And I think that some people do that and they don't even realize. Like, they're not self-aware enough to know that that could be a problem. So I really respect that they're aware and acknowledge and they're double checking like, hey, is this okay? I respect that. I'm gonna go crabapple because I don't think there's anything malicious. I think everything here comes from a place of genuinely wanting to protect their child, genuinely wanting what's best for them, wanting to support them with whatever their decision is. I do think there is a little bit of projection going on to the situation.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's intentional, but I think that because there is that projection that is kind of interfering with what the kid wants to be doing, because at that age she just wants to do what her friends are doing. She just wants to do what all the kids are doing right now. And so I can't say like, oh, they're perfect, because that is a little bit of projection that it is kind of controlling what the kid's doing. So I'm going crabapple.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree with me, but I'm going crabapple.
No, my instinct was also crabapple for the same reason. Because also, when I was growing up, my two best friends were both Jewish, and they got to do all this stuff at temple together. So when I grew up, I was like, well, I want to be Jewish because I want to go to hang out more time with my friends. And every once in a while, I did go to temple with them, and they danced around with the Torah and then ate a bunch of food. And I was like, this is great. Why wouldn't someone want to come hang out with your cool friends and go to a feast? Yeah. But of course, I was like a child looking at these situations and not really understanding the full context of that. So I would also say crabapple. I think the parent is doing the right thing. I think they're like trying to evaluate at every step, and I think that that's good parenting. But I can't say like, oh, you're a great person for
projecting your past trauma.
Yeah,
I think she's being a good apple. I don't have any problem with what she's doing. I don't think she quite understands what she believes. Does that make sense? Because if she really believes there's nothing to that, then there shouldn't be a problem with that. So she obviously believes that this is going to at least push her in a direction that she's worried about. But I think all of her heart is in the right place.
Apple number 2. Am I the bad apple for refusing to accommodate my roommate's girlfriend? I feel like this entire thing is ridiculous. I live with my roommate Matt, and we used to be pretty close friends, but over the last 2 years of living with him, we've drifted apart, and I'm just waiting for our leases to end to move out on my own. Matt's girlfriend Sarah pretty much lives with us, despite not even paying rent. I won't lie, she annoys me to no end. She's an entitled airhead who thinks the entire world revolves around her. Anyways, Sarah has this condition where she gets very nauseous at the slightest smell and sight of certain foods. She's an incredibly picky eater, and anything outside of corn dogs or chicken tenders makes her nauseous, according to her. Well, unfortunately for her, I like to cook. I love heavily spiced foods and love to cook Asian-style dishes, so living with a toddler who can't stand smells really sucks. Sarah's always complained about me cooking smelly foods and has asked me to stop doing it when she's home or present. Well, considering she doesn't pay any rent and spends 18 hours a day in my home, I haven't accommodated her at all. Last night, Sarah and Matt sat me down and told me I need to stop cooking because Sarah can't stand it anymore. Apparently, she had a mental breakdown last week when I was cooking curry. She claims I'm making our apartment a hostile environment by ignoring her concerns. I told them both to piss off until Sarah actually starts paying her share of the rent. Matt said that because he lives there that his opinion matters as well, and he wants me to stop. I told him, no way, absolutely not, because he's only doing this because Sarah is being a baby. We ended up having a massive argument, and neither of them is talking to me. Both are staying at Sarah's mom's house right now. I say, good riddance. At least I did until I told the story to some co-workers, and they were all shocked. They say that I am being a complete jerk, and this has given me second thoughts on if I was the jerk or not. So, am I the bad apple?
No, he is not the bad apple.
I don't think so either.
Here's the thing. He's in a roommate agreement with a roommate.
Right.
When they joined that, the agreement did not, you can't cook your favorite foods in your own house.
Right.
This girl comes in with what is really unreasonable restrictions on what can go on in a house that she's not paying
in
rent for.
someone else's
And the fact
house.
that the roommate is paying rent has nothing to do with it. The roommate has been paying rent and not wanting this, and now he's changing the rules because he's got this girl there. If she was paying a third of the rent, maybe she could say, well, you just let me know when you're cooking and I will get out if it really bothers her. But to say you can't cook the food you want in your own place that you're doing it, for me, I'm like, good riddance that they're staying at mom's good. You should ride out the lease and enjoy your freedom while they're out of there. I think that the other people are being very unreasonable.
Oh yeah, no one should be able to tell you what you can and cannot cook in your own home, especially if they don't live there.
Nope.
Yes.
And also, like, there is definitely a strong theme of a discomfort around ethnic food specifically, which to me is a red flag.
The biggest thing that I noticed is it's very much like, well, she's not comfortable in our house. Well, now my opinion matters because I pay rent because my girlfriend's not comfortable. But did anyone ask, like, OP if it was okay for girlfriend to move in? Like, if it's supposed to be, oh, everyone who's paying rent gets an opinion and I get to stand up for my girlfriend, should the original person, should OP not have a say in whether or not this girl's practically living in his home without paying rent? You can't pick and choose. If everyone gets to dictate what everyone else is doing,
then he should be allowed to dictate how often and how much time this person is allowed to
because
spend
she's
the time in their shared spaces.
she's using stuff that they are paying for.
right, and I'm not saying that I think that he should be able to tell girlfriend she can't come over, but I'm saying that if they can control his cooking, he should also be able to control the guests, and I don't think either should be the case. I think he should be able to cook whatever he wants as long as he's picking up his own mess and buying his own ingredients and not like he's not using someone else's stuff.
If he's leaving stuff out, then that but that doesn't seem to be the issue.
And he doesn't appear to be doing anything like overtly petty or passive aggressive of like, well, now I'm going to cook more on purpose. He's just saying, no, you can't tell me what to do in my own home. But exactly, but like he's not doing that. Like there might have been like a little name calling on his part, which I'm not super supportive of just being like that person's an airhead.
Right.
But at the same time, like I think at that point he's just frustrated with the situation. And I think that frustration can be warranted.
The girlfriend and the boyfriend are the bad apples in this case by saying, you're not allowed to cook the food you like in your own house. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
So I'm going good apple.
Good apple.
Good apple.
Apple number 3. Am I the bad apple for disrupting a funeral?
I may just go ahead and jump in. I think I can judge this one just on the premise, but we'll see.
Sometimes they have twists.
Okay, let's hear.
I'm a 38 male and I have a daughter who's 17 female. I also have a stepdaughter, Ava, who's 9 female. My daughter Issa's stepfather recently died. I felt terrible because I knew that while they weren't super close, he's been in her life since she was 5, and I know it must have really hurt hard. My whole family was also invited to the funeral, and we wanted to go to support Issa. The issue is, however, that my stepdaughter Ava has horrible social anxiety. She's homeschooled because of it and has major difficulty going to social gatherings. She's in therapy and has an emotional support rabbit named Luna. Since this funeral would be pretty crowded, we decided to let Ava bring Luna to the funeral. Issa, however, had a problem with that. Issa quickly told me that she didn't think it was a good idea. Pets weren't allowed at this particular cemetery. I told her that this is a rabbit. What harm could a rabbit do? And Ava has a medical reasoning for bringing this rabbit. She then looked it up on Google and showed me that only service animals were allowed to come. I told her, look, I'd bring Luna, and if an issue arose, we'd just leave. She begged me not to, saying that her stepdad's death was already hard enough on her and her mom, and she didn't want any drama to make it worse. I told her, I'll think about it. I'll keep it all in mind. The thing is, though, Ava does need her emotional support pet. She wouldn't make it through the funeral if she didn't. Issa also really wanted Ava there, so what else could we do? Issa drove to the funeral with her mom while my family and I drove together. We did end up bringing Luna. Issa and her mom were waiting for us at the entrance when we got there, and when Issa saw Luna, she freaked out and started yelling that she told me not to bring her. I explained Ava's needs, and she then screamed that Ava should have just stayed home, and that caused Ava to cry. And I felt bad because I know she was already dreading the social interaction, so hearing her sister say that definitely hurt her badly. Then my wife and Issa started getting into it, and not so kind words were spoken by either party. Issa's mom took Issa's side and told us to leave. I agreed, and we just went home. Issa's been giving me the cold shoulder ever since, but I don't know how else I could have handled this differently. So, am I the bad apple? There's so many issues, very specific issues that I have with this whole story. I understand that there are a lot of people who have very severe social anxiety and aren't good in social situations, and there are emotional support animals that do help these people. But emotional support animals are not the same as service animals. They're not trained.
Yeah, it's not a seeing eye dog.
No, it's not a dog that detects seizures. It's not a seeing eye dog. It is not trained. Just because you buy a little vest off of Amazon or off the internet does not mean that your animal, whether it be a dog, a rabbit, cat, whatever, does not mean that it is qualified to act properly in public. This has also been an issue in schools when I was a teacher. There's only a few types of animals that are able to be real service animals. So telling someone that, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna bring this animal, no, you can't do that everywhere.
Yeah.
Another issue that I had was, well, she wants Ava there so bad. I don't think she did. She literally said if Ava can't be there, she should have stayed home.
Yes. And when she said that, he should have said, okay, then we'll stay home with it.
Right. The wording that was used when, Issa went to the funeral with her mom, and then my family drove together.
He's not even including the original daughter into his family.
What?
Yeah.
And even, Ava's sister, Ava's stepsister, I totally get there are some blended families that are so close and work great, and that's amazing. That's awesome. That's clearly not the case here. And when you're saying things like, oh, well, I know it's your stepfather's funeral, but my stepdaughter needs XYZ. This has nothing to do with Ava. My family drove. What do you mean your family? This is your daughter's event. Your biological daughter, which again, that doesn't mean that he shouldn't love Ava. I absolutely think step-parents should love their stepkids. But your daughter needed you, wanted you there. She doesn't care about Ava.
I can see how he would say, look, if I'm going to be there, I'm going to bring Ava.
Right, and that's fair.
And then we're going to bring the rabbit. But the girl said, if Ava can't be there without the rabbit, then Ava needs to stay at home.
And
he should have said, okay, I'll stay home with Ava. That should have been said up front. Bringing it there is asking for a confrontation at a funeral, and that's...
And right from the beginning, he says, I'm going to go there to support my daughter. That is the objective that he had by attending the funeral is to support his daughter. And she had very specific boundaries, and she's also in a moment of extreme grief.
Yes.
And her mother is in a moment of extreme grief. And if you're there to support that child, you also have to listen to that child's boundaries.
Right.
And say, if I'm here to support this daughter, that has to come first. And if I'm unable to do that, then we should sit down and have a conversation before the event of, oh, so I want to bring Ava, but she needs the rabbit. Oh, the rabbit is not allowed. That makes me uncomfortable. I don't like this. And then have the conversation of, okay, I want to show up and support you, so I'll find childcare for this child with severe social anxiety. Is it okay if your stepsister misses this? I know it's important, but she's not going to be comfortable, but I want to make sure I'm putting you first.
Yeah.
And that's not what he did. He put his other daughter first, who is dealing with the stuff that she deals with every day. Meanwhile, you have a child who's in a moment of like severe grief and severe stress, and he's not taking care of that child.
I also thought it was very interesting how, like, clearly Issa is struggling. She's going through a lot, and he's like, they weren't close, but I guess she's going through a rough time.
Yeah, that's...
What?
That was pretty weird.
I'm speechless by the lack of awareness that he has about his own child.
Well, and who is a child?
Yes, she's so young. Bad apple.
Yeah.
That you can't convince me. All around.
So I was right at the beginning.
You were right.
Yeah.
That doesn't always happen, but you were definitely right.
Apple number 4.
Am I the bad apple for teaching my daughter how to defend herself? I, 32 male, have a daughter, 6 female, in 1st grade. Ever since kindergarten, there's been a little girl who we'll call Ashley, who's been picking on and bullying my daughter. Having dealt with bullies of my own in my own days, I started teaching my daughter how to defend herself from a physical confrontation with 2 very specific rules. 1, if they're saying mean things, you do your best to just ignore them and tell your teachers. And 2, only use what you're learning if the bullying turns physical. Fast forward to 2 weeks, my wife and I get a call from the school. Apparently, during recess, my daughter was playing with a couple of her friends, who we'll call Maddie and Taylor, when Ashley comes over. Ashley starts saying really mean things, like name-calling, insults, etc., and Maddie yelled at Ashley to stop, and instead of stopping, Ashley pushed Maddie onto the ground, causing her to bump her head on a piece of playground equipment. At that point, my daughter came up and struck Ashley 2 or 3 times in the face before staff came to break it up. When it's all said and done, my daughter gets 3 days of out-of-school suspension, and Ashley's parents are threatening law schools, and now the school is mad at me because they can't have kids fighting, and my wife is mad at me because violence is never the answer. I'm proud of my daughter for defending her friend, but it all leaves me wondering, was I the bad apple?
I'm from Alabama. For me, I think the guy's a hero, and I think she's a hero. Because I had this thing happen with my little sister. I'm 10 years older than my little sister, and I just taught her how to throw a punch because this girl was picking on her so much. And I said, you do not ever throw the first punch, but if she physically pushes you down or hits you, you are allowed to punch her right in the face. And she punched her right in the face, and the girl went down. And I actually saw it happen. It was in our front yard. I saw this altercation, and I was so proud of her. When violence is happening, you need to be able to respond with violence. That's when violence works. Violence is being done to you, then you are allowed to do violence back. And Ashley should have been suspended. When I was in school, there was a thing that happened in my 6th grade class. The school had been announcing all year that there was a 0 tolerance for fights. Anybody in a fight was going to get suspended. And this kid in a class took a big swing at me, and I blocked him and hit him in the face. And then I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and like I bloodied his nose, and I took him to the office. And we got there, and and the people in the office were laughing about the face, like, oh my God, who did this to him? And I was like, I'm sorry, that was me. He took a swing at me, and I just, I laid into him just once. And they did not suspend me, and they didn't even suspend him, even though that was, that was the thing. Because if somebody does violence to you, you need to be able to defend yourself. And she should not have been suspended. So the school is a bad apple. Ashley's a bad apple. The guy's not a bad apple, neither is his daughter.
I think I guess some questions for you as far, because I think in a perfect world there would have been much more intervention done by the school before it got to this point.
That's one big issue that I have, because it says that the little girl's in first grade and that there's been a lot of bullying since kindergarten. Has anyone talked to the school? Has anyone talked to the teacher? Has anyone called in a conference for the parents? Because again, I never taught the littles. I always taught at high school level. From my understanding, there are plenty of steps that schools take, especially nowadays, to keep these things from happening. So I'm just not understanding why nothing was done.
I remember times in school where somebody was being picked on and pushed around and stuff like that, and they would go to the teachers, and the teachers would just go, okay, you're not going to do that anymore, right? Okay, good.
Yeah.
And it would just escalate, and you'd see this kid just frothing. Because they don't do anything when it's building phase. The teachers won't do anything. I don't know if it's different today. I went to school in the 70s, in the 80s. It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
I may have a very different opinion because of when I grew up. I remember my dad saying to me at one point, "We've talked to the teachers about this. If that guy hits you again or shoves you again, you can punch him in the face, and we will 100% be behind you."
Well, what's weird is that there's clearly multiple kids involved. I don't believe that 3 kids could have been tormented by this bully, and none of them had parents who weren't going to be calling the school immediately. I just can't imagine that out of 3 kids, because I understand that there's some parents that either don't know or don't know who to call or might not even notice, unfortunately, but out of 3 kids, there's no parents.
Yeah.
Well, this dad has been told that we just don't know what that part of the story is. It may be that he didn't have enough room there. It's very possible that he told people and they did next to nothing.
You're right.
So I was never a teacher, obviously, but when I used to be a camp counselor, and I did 1st and 2nd grade, and even as a camp counselor who wasn't responsible for these kids all year, just for a couple months out of the year, I felt like I was hyper aware of who got along with who, of the social hierarchies of the students, and also kids that age. Most of them are very emotional because they don't necessarily have the tools to restrain their emotions. So to me, it just feels so unlikely that someone wasn't aware of this.
Yes.
And it's hard for me to decide what I think about the situation, because I feel like there are parts missing that we're not aware of. I need more information as someone who doesn't really believe that violence is the answer, and have had bad experiences with violent people who have maintained being violent through adulthood. So I think I just need more information in order to say good apple or bad apple, because how was this was it just not handled at all by the school?
The other one thing that also I'm having trouble with, it's weird because I know how I would have acted as a kid, but I also know what I would say as a teacher, is that it wasn't the daughter who was attacked, it was another kid. And the daughter still took it upon herself.
The daughter wasn't pushed to the ground?
It was the daughter's friend.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
I didn't.
It makes it a little bit different, and I understand now why the kid may have gotten suspended.
Yes.
I still think it's wrong. I will say this. I bet you Ashley doesn't bully those kids anymore. That's the thing for me, is did it stop the bad behavior from happening?
Yes.
And teach that kid a lesson, a valuable lesson.
I also totally agree with standing up to bullies, and you can't expect a child to stand up to a bully like an adult should, because it's a child.
Yeah. Hearing this, it's hard because, again, I know how I might have acted because I'm a very protective person. I know that I would have intervened. Do I think that I would have thrown a first punch? No, I don't think that I would have, but I know that I would have intervened, and so it's hard to remove myself from the situation, but at the same time, I look at it as a teacher who's supposed to try to help these kids learn to regulate, and that's really conflicting. But regardless, I don't think the dad is bad at all.
No, not at all.
I think teaching, especially your daughter, Hey.
defend themselves.
100%.
You have to teach your kids, A, you don't start a fight, and B, how to end a fight if you,
Yes,
you know,
don't start
which
it,
is
but
what,
this is how you
which is
finish
how
it.
I was
Yeah.
always taught. It's like, you never ever throw a punch at somebody for something they've said or a way they're acting or anything like that. You let that stuff rub off you, but if somebody approaches you with physical violence, here's what you do. And I think that's a valuable lesson to teach all of your kids.
I'm going
So-
good apple.
I'm gonna stay crab apple.
You think? Why?
I feel like I need to know so much more information. Like, although, like, yes, I do think it's important for like women to defend themselves.
Yes.
I just feel like I don't have enough information about like the other steps that were taken before this.
Agreed.
Because those just weren't.
Yes.
So I don't know if it was
Yes.
right for him to teach his daughter how to punch someone in the face.
Okay.
I do agree with like standing up to bullies and to get involved if someone is being pushed around and to not be silent. I just wish there was more information about like the steps that the school had taken, things like that, for me
Okay.
to make an informed decision about whether this is right or wrong.
I
Because
think that's fair.
when it comes to violence, it's not black and white for me.
It's not. So for me, even though I would like there to be some clarifications, like obviously
Yeah.
there needs to be some, hey, if someone else is having an altercation, maybe we don't run in fists ablaze, you know, like that.
Yeah.
I definitely think there needs to be some modification, but just based on, hey, these are the 2 rules, you ignore the verbal, here's how you defend yourself. I can't necessarily say that's anything negative. I'm forever
Everything's about
cursed.
Kara.
Always.
Always.
Kara.
Always. This is my show.
Well, this is my dog.
Not anymore. My God, my ass was making me sound like an angry goose.
Darren believes in violence, especially if you're a goose.
Especially geese. I mean, I'm not.
He had
I'll be honest.
COVID
I'm
once,
not fond of geese.
and he called me, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm just chasing a bunch of geese around with a pondor."
Well, the geese attacked my dog. I have a little dog.
Anyway, enough about geese. Am I
very
right,
angry at
Hong
that
Kong?
goose.
I tell you, birds are rude. I hope you don't get chased by geese, and I hope that birds in general just leave you be, because they are rude creatures.
There.
Thank you so much for joining us. We ramble and it's fun because we have fun.
Yeah.
We love you so much and hope to see you guys next week.
Oops.
Bye, my lovelies. Mwah.
Ciao, ciao.